quick before we do. Control C. Compose. At Ethan Turner as we go. Games and injuries. Also answering your questions. All right. There we go. Let's get this out real quick. Did it not go out? What just happened? Did you get tagged at all?
No. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's here.
Okay.
I see it.
Why does it not want to show up there? All right, here we go. Control V. Control V. All right, there we
Did
are.
you see they announced that Will Greer is going to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think we knew it beforehand, though.
Yeah, they were kind of pretty transparent, I feel like, with that. They're going to draft a quarterback. I think it's over. They're just seeing what they have with Greer, if he's worth being the backup or not. I mean, I guess they took him in the third round, so I still feel like he's mostly a project at this point.
I thought he was the best one coming out.
Like, of all the quarterbacks, or just of like from that group of backups on the Panthers?
Of all the quarterbacks. Like, I thought coming out of the draft. Sorry.
Oh, like coming out of the draft, you thought he was the best. I'm confused. You thought he was the best quarterback in the whole class?
Yeah.
Like better than Kyler Murray?
Yep.
Just in terms of skill or in terms of like fantasy production?
Skill.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, he was older, so I mean, I think that from just a pure winner perspective, I could see that.
Jesus Christ, Ethan, you're futzing with your shit. Nobody's watching us. So we're just sitting here diddling ourselves.
They missed the best part. Ethan attempting to beat his mic stand.
Yeah, nobody's watching us anyway. Who cares?
Oh, shit.
Well, we may as well get started, I suppose, since we'll put this out as a podcast. All right, everybody. It is championship week, and we are here to help you set your lineups, or we'll talk about all of the games today. FF Stoppy here. I am with Ethan Turner, our local doctor, fantasy doctor specialist, whatever. Super successful man over there.
Very busy guy. Busy guy.
And we will be talking to you about each game this week and starts and sits and injuries and hopefully helping you set your lineups for your championship week. Congratulations for making it this far. I'm assuming that those who are listening probably are ones that are still playing. So congratulations on making that's far. If you didn't make it, I apologize for you being so bad. God, that was mean.
No, that's so Hey, how did your quick question, Stomp? How did your bid to repeat as Scott Fishbowl champion go?
I'm very irritated. Yes. So I
You had it.
Yes, I
You
at
had
first
it,
I did.
and you
At
lost it.
first, at first I thought, because there was a guy that in my conference that scored like 311 points, and I was like, even if I had made all of the right calls, I wouldn't have beat this guy. But I realized he was beat out in the previous week's playoffs, in the wild card playoffs. And so I looked back and I looked at who won, and if I had started Brashad Perryman over someone like Tyler Boyd or over Devonta Freeman, and I did have Brashad Perryman starting earlier in the week last week, I would have gone to the finals. I don't know if I would have won because I had Dalvin Cook, and Dalvin Cook obviously went down with injury and is probably not playing.
Definitely not playing. They're talking about shutting him down till December, which would be not good for football, but really it doesn't matter past this week for fantasy football.
But it's not, that's not even the point. Like, I could have said, yeah, I won last year and I'm in the top 20 this year. But no, I made a stupid decision. I went against my gut, and yeah, there we go. So I'm irritated. At the very least, I made conference finals, so I feel okay about that.
Ultimately, I did make the playoffs, so you still got me beat. That was my Scott Fishbowl debut, finishing at 6-6, which I think is pretty fair. I started 6-2, and I thought I was freaking good to go. And then my team just got hit with like 5 straight wide receiver injuries, and I had Aaron Rodgers, who put like total duds on for like 3 straight weeks, and
yeah,
that cost me. So you still have me beat. You are whatever happens next year, you will always be the Scott Fishbowl 8 champion, the number one guy. You'll always have that. So I'm sorry. I was really pulling for you to make to repeat, because I don't think that'll ever happen, but I still believe that you can pull another one out.
It was a devastating loss for me. Like I said, like, it was one of those, if that 311 point guy had beat me, there was like nothing I could have done. But now I know I could have done something about it, and now I'm very irritated. Yeah. And I had like fantastic matchups coming up where I had Chris Carson on my team facing Arizona this week. I had Devonta Freeman on my team facing the Jaguars this week. I had Tyler Boyd who's facing Miami this week. It's just like everything was lining up, and I made a very stupid decision. But so it goes.
That's how fantasy is.
Yeah. How are you doing in the rest of your leagues?
This is a weird year for me. I joined way too many leagues for me. But part of it was because I didn't realize how busy my real life would be when I got like a real job. But so I was in 9 leagues. One of my leagues was Scott Fishbowl. Of course, I've already talked about not making the playoffs there. Another one of my leagues is a dynasty team that I was tanking in actively pretty much from the start. I traded away a bunch of guys. I have 4 of the first 10 picks in our rookie draft, including 2 of the top 3. So I'm pretty excited about 2020. And then I have actually 3 seconds that are all in the top 5. So I'm pretty much going to dominate the draft. And then I have 3 more first rounders in 2021 in that league. So I'm set for a very quick turnaround, hopefully with a couple good classes coming in. I'm really hurting it at quarterback, but I've got pretty good wide receivers. So I'm feeling confident in my future there. But of the 7 leagues, I only made 2 championship games. Ironically, it's against probably my arch nemesis in terms of fantasy in both leagues, both my home dynasty league and my the Fantasy Football 24/7 does a friends and family league from last year that we kept up with. And I invited this guy from my hometown into that league, and we ran the table, and now we're facing each other in that championship too. So 7 leagues or 7 playoffs, 2 championship games, both against the same guy. So pretty ironic. He's not even in the fantasy football community in terms of like writing or doing anything, but he's probably the best fantasy football player that doesn't like write or talk about fantasy football professionally that I know. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun week. We've already been giving each other hell. I'm already planning to buy a championship belt if I win our home dynasty league. So he has bought, he has won, he is never not made it to the champion. This is the 4th year that we've had this dynasty league, and he's never not made it to the championship game. He won the first 2 years, and he bought these big championship rings, and he wears them every year at our rookie draft. So if I manage to beat him, I'm going full on championship belt, and I'm going to wear it all around town after we go drinking. So it's going to be, I'm hoping for an upset win there.
Well, that's pretty good numbers there. Pretty good playoff numbers there. Good for you.
Yeah.
I got a few $1,000s on the line this week. So
that is terrifying. I
know. I mean, I'm in 6 championships.
That's awesome.
A few big, quote unquote, big money leagues. Like the maximum was, I think, $200 buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
One, my home dynasty league, I am hoping for back-to-back. It's kind of an empire pot. So if you win back-to-back, you get the pot. And we have not had back-to-back in 5 years. So that pot has gotten pretty big. And like all of your, like we pay money to get in the IR, and then there's a certain amount of money that goes into the pot every year. So I'm going for a back-to-back there so I could win a few $1,000, or I could win over $1,000 there. And then a couple other leagues I can win $1,000. Then there's a few more out there. So could be a big payday, which would be nice.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I love money. So
I hear you.
We
all need money.
If you can break even on fantasy, it's a worthwhile effort. If you can make money playing, that's creme de la creme.
I'm hoping for a 4x return on investment, so that'd be all right.
That is huge, especially in redraft, because it's hard. I feel like year to year to.
I won one redraft league a while ago, and I'm in my championship of my home redraft league. Pretty jacked about it. Guess who I have in that league? Just a wild guess.
Probably Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah,
I reached a tiny bit, but not too much. I have Lamar stacked with Mark Andrews, stacked with Mark Ingram.
That is really mean.
And then I have Chris Carson.
It's so efficient, though.
I know. I have Chris Carson, and I kept Alvin Kamara in like the 5th or something. So yeah, I'm sitting pretty right now.
That's nice. That's a nice feeling.
But let's get on to why people are listening to us. Nobody cares about our own fantasy teams. We do have a question in the chat here. Right away, Richard Lopez, he says, hey guys, thanks for all the advice this year. Hey, Richard, thanks for listening to us all year. Can you rank these 3 dynasty QB stashes in a 2 QB? Bortles, Tyrod, and Mason Rudolph. Who he just
what?
Oh, what do you mean?
I think he meant.
I'm guessing.
I'm gonna say he meant like just got cut in the league,
which is stupid because it's 2 QB.
Yeah, Stompy, don't you have a league where you've had like the worst quarterback injury luck?
Oh my God.
Maybe of all time.
Well, it's not even injuries. Like, well, it was a perfect storm of everything. So I really like Nick Foles going into this year. So I was planning on getting him as a QB3. So I picked Andrew Luck, and it was like in the 4th round. I was like, there's no way I'm going to just not, like, even with the foot ankle injury and this, mind you, this was before retirement. I'm not that dumb. But I picked Andrew Luck in like the 4th round of a SuperFlex startup. Then I got Matt Stafford, and then I picked Foles. Well, Luck retired. Foles got injured in the first week, and so I had to start buying QBs. And I think I bought. Mason. Yeah, I know. And I bought Mason Rudolph. It wasn't like horrendous, but it wasn't great. I think I bought Mason Rudolph.
Okay.
And then I had to buy like Ryan Finley. It was not great. Because after Mason Rudolph went down, and then Stafford went down, and somehow I think I bought Kyle Allen, and I don't remember when I bought Kyle Allen, but I've been playing basically with just Kyle Allen for the last few weeks. And obviously he's being benched for Will Grier. So I don't have a QB in a SuperFlex championship.
That's really sad. To this question though, this one's a little tricky. Definitely Bortles last. I don't think he was very good.
Yeah.
And I just don't see I don't see him paying off unless some without an injury or something else. At least with the other two, I could see a way for them to be starters next year without some, something outside of their control, happening. So, I mean, Rudolph has the age, but I don't think he's really impressed with the time that he's had. As a Steelers fan, it's been hard to watch him play. I think the Steelers are probably going to draft a quarterback in the second round or third round this year. Again, I think you're probably looking at maybe a Jordan Love. Maybe they try to move up into the first to get a guy like Justin Herbert if he starts falling. I think Sam Ehlinger is another option that,
I don't think he's going to come out until 2021.
Yeah. So if he came out, we're still kind of waiting on some of these quarterbacks, but those are the types of guys that I think the Steelers could potentially try to bring in. My personal best opinion would be to try to get a guy like Jalen Hurts, but I don't think that he's going to fall far enough. I think that Lamar Jackson's success this year has pushed Jalen Hurts probably into the late first or mid first, and the fact that he plays quarterback. But I'd probably still go Rudolph first just because he's already on a team. He's young. He wasn't ready to start this year, but I could see the team, they've been grooming him, and he's got youth on his side. I would go probably Rudolph, Tyrod, who I think could be a starter next year, but I don't expect that either. I think he's pretty much doomed to be a backup unless they really feel like, Rivers is done. And then Bortles at the end, because I just don't feel like I think they're better quarterbacks than Blake Bortles, and I just don't see any way he ever becomes any kind of consistent starter again. At least with the other two, I can see a path. Rivers retires, they use Tyrod for a year. That's going to provide you some value. The Steelers don't have a first, so they could decide to go with Rudolph and somebody, bring somebody in or whatever. I could still see Rudolph having some value there if he gets a chance to be a starter. Bortles, I don't really see it right now.
I agree with that. I mean, Mason Rudolph is young. They drafted him, I think, to be the future. I don't know if they got enough of him this year, but if there's anybody who has like the future to be the best future prospects to be a starting quarterback, it's definitely Mason Rudolph. Tyrod was never awful. And with the way that the NFL is going with guys like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, I would think that maybe he gets another chance and to do kind of a read option, an RPO type of offense. And I mean, Rivers fell off a cliff this year, and they don't really have a backup there. I mean, they do have Easton Stick, but that dude is a long-term project. So I would think that maybe Tyrod can be a bridge QB somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I mean, QBs are extremely valuable. We've seen it this year specifically with all of the injuries. So I mean, I could see Tyrod being the starter for Los Angeles next season, because I believe Phillip Rivers' contract is up this year. I wouldn't want to re-sign him for how he's playing. I mean, I would think that Tyrod gives them a better chance to win now. So, yeah, I think I agree with Ethan here. It's got to be Mason Rudolph, Tyrod, and then Bortles had like one. He's never really been a good NFL QB, so I don't know if he gets that chance to be that starter ever again. So there's your answer, Richard. So let's move on to the games this week. We do have 3 Saturday games, so no Thursday game. That's why we're recording tonight and doing this live show. And I think a lot of people are having some withdrawals. But we will go through all of the games this week, 3 Saturdays. So remember that, everybody. We have 3 Saturday games this week.
Very important. Which is great because I have to stay at home and wait on a package for Christmas on Saturday.
I'm pretty irritated because I am traveling to Colorado all day. So I'm driving to Colorado 13 hours. So I'll be able to listen.
That seems like a lot.
I'm just going to make my girlfriend drive the entire time so I can check my fantasy scores.
Oh, dude, to me that's the word. I don't even look at fantasy until when the games are done at each time slot. I'll look and see how my fantasy teams are doing. I have found that is much more relaxing.
Oh, I'm sure.
And a lot less
That doesn't
stressful
mean
for
it's
me.
it's my
It's
drug.
a habit.
It's my drug.
It's like, and it's just the last week you're gonna be able to do it until next year. That is, man, that's sad when you actually put it. Can we just pour one out for this fantasy season?
By the way, I'm taking a month. I'm taking a month off, so this might be the last time that you guys hear me for a month.
Yeah, and who knows if we're gonna bring him back? Let's just be honest here.
I get it. So we'll start with those Saturday games. Houston Texans at Tampa Bay Bucks. This should be an extremely high scoring game. Two very bad defenses, specifically in the secondary. Two good fantasy quarterbacks. I want to emphasize on the fantasy side of things because I'm sure John and James are listening to this and hey, he's terrible. Jameis Winston is awful. Yes, I get it, guys. Jameis Winston is not a good quarterback. I know that. He's not a good NFL quarterback, but for fantasy football, he's fantastic. So we have that game. The over-under is 53 points, I believe, is the highest of the week. So expect a lot of points scored. Obviously, you're starting Deshaun Watson. You're starting Jameis Winston. A lot of injuries in this game. Pretty much all the wide receivers at this point. So we'll start on the Tampa Bay side here with Godwin, with Mike Evans, and with Scott Miller, which has kind of gone under the radar here.
Scotty Miller. I love it. I love this. This is such a fascinating. We went from arguably the best wide receiver core tandem in football to now we're like Rashad Perriman's going to win me a championship this week. Like this is it. I'm starting him in a couple leagues. This is just one of those things where every year we have guys that win you championships, and there's a lot of people out there that if you started Perriman last week, unlike Stompy, you're probably sitting in your championship game because of the third best wide receiver, a guy who arguably.
Why you gonna rub that in my face,
dude? I'm just giving you a hard time, man. It hurts me. It hurts me.
Oh God.
I could see this game getting out of hand pretty quick as far as the throwing the ball. So Perriman, I think you should fire up. I would say that all the Texans. I mean, you pretty much have to start DeAndre Hopkins. There's no real argument on why you wouldn't. I think that Will Fuller and Kenny Stills both have touchdown upside. Scott Miller, again, if you just need that, like if you play in a deep
he's on
league,
the IR. I'm not kidding. I was not kidding. The injuries. Dude, there's 3 hamstring injuries there.
Oh, Scotty Miller ended up on the IR too?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh my gosh, I should know this as the injury guy, but
yeah, Jesus.
That's terrible.
You're making us look like amateurs.
Justin Watson is a guy.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean,
he could.
So let's look at it this way. I just lost my train of thought. Jameis Winston has thrown for less than 300 yards, I believe, once since like week 6. So you do know that they're throwing the ball. We do know that their running backs are atrocious. I mean, okay, I shouldn't say atrocious for all of those. What's his face? Who cares what his name is? Ronald Jones running truthers out there. But
oh gosh, Ronald Jones.
But yeah, I mean, Jameis Winston chucks the ball. I mean, since week 6, he's thrown for over 300 yards in all but one game. And in that one game, he threw for 268 yards. So, and he's thrown for 400 yards 3 times on the season. He's thrown for 300 yards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times on the season. So, they're throwing the ball. They don't have the running game. So they have Rashad Perriman and Justin Watson. I know I am starting Rashad Perriman in a couple places. We saw what he can do last week. We've seen some connection with Jameis and Rashad Perriman this season. Justin Watson showed a little bit 2 weeks ago, and with the amount of targets that are available, you have to expect that Justin Watson's probably got some upside too. So if you need to take a swing and you didn't get Perriman, maybe you play Justin Watson as a flex option. I also really like OJ Howard this week. The Texans have not been good against tight ends this season. So, and especially of late. So there's and Howard, I believe, has 15 targets over the last 3 games. So he's starting to get more involved. So I do like OJ Howard as well. But yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot of pass catchers there. And there's a lot of targets. So those 3 I really like this week.
Yeah, I think OJ Howard is quietly resurged as a low end tight end 1 option. Again, more injuries to this team is only going to push his value up. You were actually lowballed him there. He has had 18 targets in the last 3 games.
I apologize.
He's gone for 4 catches and over 46 yards in each of those. Hasn't had a touchdown. I definitely could see this being a game where he ends up getting to see at least a few chances to score a touchdown. Only 1 touchdown this year, but I mean, if you look, OJ Howard was one of those guys that I think let a lot of people down this year. But we're seeing now that there isn't the wide receivers to throw to, they are trying to get him more involved. He still has that breakaway speed where he can turn a catch into 40 or 50 yards. Over those last 3 weeks, he had 12 yards a catch, 18 yards a catch, 11 yards a catch. I mean, he's one of those guys that could take a one catch down 50 yards and a touchdown, and then he's a top 3 tight end on the week. So definitely like him as a play this week as well.
On the other side of the ball, obviously DeAndre Hopkins. Other than that, I mean, you kind of have to like Will Fuller this week.
Yeah.
Is he going to be playing? Is he going to be effective? Can you tell us anything about that hamstring?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good chance that he plays. He is still listed as questionable, but very unlikely that he misses this game. Unless he has a setback in practice, which so far up to this point, it doesn't look like he has had one. It looks like Fuller should be good to go. And I think that he's definitely in a top 36 wide receiver against that Bucs defense that just can't really stop anybody.
Yeah. So my issue with Fuller is just trusting that his hamstring's not going to pop at any point in time.
It's definitely a risk. That's the problem with these hamstring injuries, is that we've seen it year after year after year. I always tell people, the most likely chance of re-injury is right when they first come back, and as soon as they start running full speed. So with Fuller, we did see him last week. I think we could see him again this week. Another week to heal, and I think that I don't see any problem with playing him as a wide receiver 3. I think that he's definitely worth the boom because, again, he's one of those guys that he could win you a fantasy championship by himself if he blows up. And
that's one of those things. If you're an underdog, or if you, let's say, lost Dalvin Cook and you don't have much in terms of backups and you need to take that swing, maybe you take the swing with somebody like Will Fuller.
Yep.
And you have multiple in this one. I mean, Perryman, Fuller, Watson are all pretty big swings here, but they could win you championships this week. Those are really the only 2 that I like. I mean, I think I'm not in love with, or I really don't like Hyde this week. The Buccaneers have been fantastic against the run. They're ranked 1st overall in DVOA. On the season, I believe they've allowed the fewest fantasy points, if not top 3 fewest fantasy points to running backs. Yeah, they've allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs on the season. They've only allowed 1 100-yard rusher. The next highest is 75 to Derrick Henry. They've held a lot of rushers, 250 yards rushing. So I don't think Carlos Hyde is a good start this week. If anybody, it's going to be Duke Johnson, but I highly doubt that you're going to be starting Duke Johnson in your championship game. And then believe it or not, Tampa Bay's been pretty good, especially recently against tight ends. So while we liked Fells early on, I can't trust him. I don't think you can trust him. I mean, over the last 5 weeks, they have allowed the 2nd fewest fantasy points to tight ends. they allowed Jared Cook to catch 1 touchdown in week 11, and that's been the only double-digit game since week 9. So you just can't trust Fells. I don't think you can trust Aiken. So really it's going to be a high volume game again for DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller probably.
Yep. Totally agree.
Moving on to the next game on Saturday, Buffalo Bills at New England Patriots. This is almost the exact opposite game of the first game. It's going to be a defensive slugfest. 2 very good defensive teams here. The over-under is 38.5, so Vegas expects this to be a very low-scoring game. Not a lot to like in this game in terms of fantasy football. I think Devin Singletary is about the only thing that you can really like in this game, feel relatively confident about in this game. Am I wrong?
No. I mean, I think that just from a volume perspective, you're probably going to have to start him anyway, just because he has basically turned himself into a low-key bell cow. And I think that he's a guy that I target pretty aggressively in my dynasty leagues. This is one that if he has a bad game here and hopefully if you're in a dynasty league, your trades open after the fantasy championship. He's a guy that I'm aggressively targeting in dynasty just because I don't see any reason for them to bring in another guy. They could theoretically bring in another guy, but I just don't see any reason for them to, based on how well he's played when given this opportunity at the end of the year. So John Brown is going to he's probably going to get shut out with McCourty. I mean, he's playing against that secondary for the Patriots. You don't play with them. You don't play around with them. He's a guy that, if you're looking at Will Fuller or John Brown, I know Brown's been kind of the guy that's been consistent week to week, but I'm probably switching a guy like Fuller in. Just because I could see Brown just playing. I don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game anyway. They're talking about possibly, I've seen a report on this, that this elbow injury with Tom Brady might be a little bit more significant than what he's letting on. There's some rumors going around that Belichick is worried that that's kind of part of the reason Brady hasn't been playing well. I think you could argue that he's
also very old.
His age could be impacting that as well. I won't doubt one of the best pure quarterbacks of all time, but I don't. This is a game I don't think they need to have. I think it's going to be a ton of just pounding the ball, a lot of running. I would say, with that in mind, I don't hate Sony Michel this week. I know it's a bad matchup. As an RB3 though, I don't hate it. Outside of that, this is pretty ugly. I'm probably staying away for the most part.
So just to the Patriots, their I guess quote unquote weakness is against the run. They have allowed a few 100-yard rushers this season, 4 on the season, including Frank Gore, the immortal Frank Gore. Chubb had a big game. Mark Ingram had a big game. Ezekiel Elliott also had a big game. And then Joe Mixon had a monster game last week, 136 yards. Joe Mixon, the second half of this season, I believe, has been like the RB5 or something like that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of been, I guess, their little bit of weakness. So Singletary, I think, is an okay flex play. But other than that, like you said, I mean, the last time they played, I believe Brown caught 5 of 11 targets for 69 yards. Nice. Nice. And then Cole Beasley actually had 75 yards. If there's a weakness in that pass defense, it's against slot receivers. But even then, they're not giving up big games. I mean, the one big game they gave up was the Golden Tate. He had 102 yards and that 1 touchdown just out of nowhere. Other than that,
didn't he have a 50-yard catch in that game?
Yeah. I believe it was a 50-yard touchdown catch.
Yeah. So,
but yeah,
again, one big play.
I understand how
weeks.
Yeah, I understand how effective John Brown has been, but you just cannot play with the Patriots defense. And on the other side of the ball, like Josh Allen only completed 46% of his passing attempts, I believe, against the Patriots the first time around. he did have that concussion, I believe, in the second half, but he was not on his way to a good fantasy day whatsoever. And with Josh Allen, you're banking on a rushing touchdown. And there's just other options that I would take over Josh Allen. I mean, I would take Ryan Fitzpatrick. Andy Dalton's not the worst stream in the world against Miami. Drew Lock is facing Detroit at home in what should be better weather. So it's just I probably would play Drew Lock for the ceiling over Josh Allen this week. It's just not. It's not. I understand that he's been extremely effective on the ground, but when you're only gonna put up like 150 yards through the air, he's not Lamar Jackson. You are really banking on that rushing touchdown, and like you said, I just don't think the Patriots are a defense that you play around with.
I will say the one kind of question mark for me in this game is Julian Edelman. We've seen last week was arguably probably the worst game he's had in 2 years, at least, maybe worse. He only had 5 targets, 2 receptions. He's dealing with knee and shoulder issues. He has not looked good. I mean, this is his 11-week low in snap percentage as well. He only had played 40 snaps at 60%. He's going to play, but I really do feel like Julian Edelman is a trap this week. Yeah. I would not be suiting. I'm sitting him in one of my championship games. As sad as it is for me, having traded for him earlier in this year for this situation, I just don't think that it's the Bills. The Tre'Davious White. If Edelman plays, he gets Tre'Davious White, and White is going to probably crush him. So. Just stay away from the wide receivers in this game. I just don't see any reason for them to be starting on your team.
Honestly, stay away from everybody in this game.
That's pretty much all you have to say. What's this last Saturday game?
Los Angeles Rams at San Francisco 49ers. This one could also be a relatively ugly game.
Or it could be huge. This is a weird one. This is like the 49ers defense has been really good at times, and then there's times where they give up a ton of points. So against that, again, that was against the Saints, but we'll have to see kind of what this game turns into. I mean, what do you think for these guys? Obviously, you're starting Gurley, right?
I mean, it really depends. If I am starting Gurley in one league because there's 5 flex positions. 4 flex, 3 flex, and a super flex. But my other QB is Matt Stafford, and he's on IR. So, so I have to start Gurley there. But I mean, if you only have to start 2 running backs, and let's just say you draft like I do, and you go running back heavy, Todd Gurley might be a sit option this week. I get that he's just heavily involved. And they're fighting for their playoff lives. But, I mean, it's San Francisco. San Francisco has been phenomenal all season. This is the weakness. Against the run is the quote-unquote weakness of the 49ers defense. But how weak is it really? I mean, they've allowed the second fewest fantasy points to running backs on the season. They've allowed the fewest over the past 5 weeks. So it's not like you are getting a fantastic matchup by any means. I think if you have better options, I might be sitting Gurley. If you have a Devonta Freeman, I would be sitting Gurley.
Yeah, this one's tough too because when they played each other earlier in the year, Gurley missed that game. So we didn't even get to see Gurley against San Francisco. Obviously, that offense didn't play particularly well. Jared Goff, I think, had looks like he had 78 yards passing on the whole game.
I think
no touchdowns, no interceptions, but I
think that was a game where they allowed 2 straight 100 yards and then a 78 yard. It was just you couldn't do anything against the 49ers.
Yeah, and it's not like Malcolm.
Yeah,
Brown
they went. Sorry,
Bacon.
So it was Baker Mayfield had 100, Goff had 78, and then Case Keenum had 77. That was 3 straight games.
Yeah, that's when we thought San Francisco was like the most legit defense on the planet. Obviously, they've faded a
Of late,
little
right.
bit, but they're still pretty darn good. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a defense you would trifle with. Not quite to the Patriots level, but still not a defense you want to have a ton
No.
of stock playing up against. So if you've got Rams, this is a good week. You're going to probably have to sit them. I'll be honest.
Here's my thing, though. There are two players that I don't think you can sit, and it's Robert Woods and Tyler Higbee.
But, okay, so you say that, but Everett has been cleared to play. So Gerald Everett is coming back. He's off the injury report. I know that probably just ruined your whole week. But he got removed from the injury report today, and he will play.
Oh,
so,
God damn it.
So if you're trusting Tyler Higbee, you're playing a dangerous game, my friend.
Jesus.
I know that's not a good feeling.
Why? Just no. Sit him. Stop it. Now I got to think about playing Jack Doyle over Tyler Higbee.
One of two things that's going to happen with this. Either they're going to keep Higbee, who has played incredibly well the last 3 weeks, or they're just going to slot Gerald Everett right back into that spot.
Which is stupid. Higbee has 3 straight 100-yard receiving. Like, he's been their best receiver. Ugh.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I thought Higbee earned a starting job over Everett with how he played. But you know how these teams are, man. Everett was the starter. So, this is going to be tough. It's one of two things that's going to happen. And that is a dangerous game to play. I would still probably start Higbee if my other option was Jack Doyle. But if I got anybody else, like I'm putting OJ Howard in for Higbee in a league this week, just because I think that Howard's matchup's better. And I don't trust the Rams, dude. I don't trust the Rams to not put Gerald Everett right in there.
Luckily, that's my Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey league. And Aaron Jones, and Mike Boone, and Devontae Adams, and Darren Waller.
Nobody cares about your fantasy team.
But yeah, you're gonna have to figure out that with Tyler Higbee. I mean, there are definitely some better plays out there, but with how hot he's been, I don't know if you can afford to sit him. Like, maybe if you have OJ Howard, fine, but like you're still starting
a star tight end,
right? Maybe, but you're still starting Kittle over him. You're still starting Kelsey. You're still starting Ertz. But then that's where, I'd probably start Waller over him, but that's where it starts to get iffy.
Yeah.
So you might have to take your licks on that one. And just take your chance. But the other one, like
likely,
I said,
if you're starting Tyler Higbee, you needed him because you don't have anything at tight end. You picked him up off waivers. You probably spent some coin on him. Either hopefully the first week that Everett was out, but definitely if you picked him up the second week, you're probably hurting at tight end. You're probably gonna have to start him anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
And like I said, the other one, Robert Woods has, except for last game, has been dominating of late. He's been requiring a huge target. I think 25% target share, something like that. And I don't think they're going to go away from him.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp has disappeared.
Brandon Cooks has not been involved.
Non-existent.
It's been Higbee and it's been Robert Woods. And like I said, I don't think you can afford to sit either one in this game. I don't know if I think Richard Sherman's been dealing with some injuries.
Yes, he is. Gosh, what did he have?
He had a hamstring injury.
Yeah, he had an injury.
So, that could be something to hold on to as well. But again, I don't think you can sit Robert Woods unless you're like stacked at wide receiver, and I don't think you can sit Tyler Higbee this week unless you're unless you have like a super tight end group.
Yeah, I agree with that.
On the other side of the ball, obviously you're starting Kittle. Raheem Mostert has basically forced the hand of Shanahan here. Though I believe that Mostert he's played last week. He only got 53% of the snaps. Tevin Coleman saw 30%. Matt Brady. this is still a running back by committee. Mostert has been the most effective, but you're not expecting him to get 20 touches. He's going to get you 10 to 15, but he's been effective with it.
Yeah, he's scored in the last 4 games. So
yeah, this is another.
I don't see any reason why you wouldn't trust him. This offense can score points. So
and the Rams, the Rams have been vulnerable to the run of late. Mark Ingram gashed them. Chris Carson gashed him. He had 76 yards on 15 carries, and then last week Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard just crushed him. So, yeah, I think Raheem Mostert's a good RB2 flex option as well here.
What do you think about the quarterbacks here? I mean, are you willing to start Jimmy Garoppolo? Are you willing to start
Nope.
Jared Goff? Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too.
I mean, Goff, absolutely not. But I think
Garoppolo is more of a QB2 this week. So if you're playing a SuperFlex, hopefully you are. That's why you're listening to this show. But I think he's okay as a QB2, but I wouldn't expect huge game out of him.
Well, and if you look at their numbers, their numbers since week 8, they haven't been giving up big numbers. They gave up one big game to Lamar Jackson, which is kind of the outlier for everybody. Lamar Jackson just runs over San Francisco had a horrendous game against Lamar Jackson. New England had a horrendous game against Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is the exception here. But yeah, they're not giving up passing yards. From week 10 through week 15 against Dallas, the most passing yards they gave up was 245, and that was to Russell Wilson with no touchdowns. Even last week, Dak Prescott in that blowout only had 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they're not giving up a ton of points there, and I think they're going to just run the ball and just kind of put Jimmy Garoppolo in that game manager type situation like he should be.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know what that means for Debo. I don't love it because you have Jalen Ramsey there. Who was their second cornerback there? And I can't remember his name. Something Nichols. I believe he was injured, but I'm not sure. But there's just not a lot to love about the wide receiver core right now. Emmanuel Sanders had a blow-up game. I believe Debo had a blow-up game. But I don't think that you can really trust anybody besides George Kittle in this situation.
Yeah. I think that's been the case all year. There's a little bit of a stretch there where you could trust Debo. Emmanuel Sanders is so boom bust right now. Could he have a big game? Yeah, but are you probably going to be able to trust him? I wouldn't bank on it, having a good game. So, that's probably a non-factor there. I think we've pretty much hit everybody in this game. So let's head on to the next one here.
All right. So we have the Jacksonville Jaguars at Atlanta Falcons. This, I think, is a sneaky high-scoring game. Neither defense has been good. The Falcons' secondary has been a lot better since Raheem can't remember who took over the play calling duties. Raheem Morris. Yeah, that was it. Raheem Morris took over the secondary duties. So they've been a lot better in the secondary there. But, I think most of this game is going to be on the ground, honestly. Both teams are bad against the run. Specifically Jacksonville, especially over the last 5 weeks, has been allowed the most fantasy points to running backs. So this is where I really like Devonta Freeman. Freeman has averaged, according to Yahoo, scoring 16.9 fantasy points against teams that are allowing or that are in the bottom half of the league in terms of allowing fantasy points to running backs, if that makes sense. So basically the worst
plays
teams,
well against bad teams.
Yeah, he plays well against bad rush defense teams. And that's the epitome of Jacksonville. So I think this is another Devonta Freeman big week. And like I said, if you have Devonta Freeman and Todd Gurley, I'd be playing Devonta Freeman. Probably playing Devonta Freeman over Singletary this week as well. He's going to have a good week this week. And when you take into account that Devonta Freeman, I believe, is 13th in the league in targets, even even though he's missed 2 games, he's very heavily involved in the passing game. Calvin Ridley's not there. He could be very heavily involved in the passing game again. So this is a Devonta Freeman week for me.
Obviously, you're starting Julio.
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley's out. He's got that abdominal injury, which I'll be honest with you, I still have not seen anything about this, which really concerns me for Calvin Ridley. I just don't. He basically collapsed on the sidelines, announced that he was out for the year the next day, and that is it. That's all we've heard from it. It's very weird. I don't understand what it was. I don't understand how serious it was. Hopefully in the offseason we'll hear, he had surgery. Something happened to him. Obviously, he's not playing. So we need to know kind of what that is to assess his future long-term value. But Julio Jones you have to start Julio Jones. DJ Chark is coming off an ankle injury. He, despite being very good this year, it looks like he might play. He's been limited in practice. I would not be trusting him. He's a guy that relies on speed. Even in a good matchup, an ankle injury is going to slow him down. I would say he's a low-end wide receiver 3 this week. Hopefully, and that's mostly just because of matchup. I mean, Atlanta is bad against pass, so I like that. I like, I like Chris Conley as kind of a touchdown-dependent guy.
Conley's a very good start if Shark does not play. If Shark plays, I'm not playing anybody but Shark for the pass catchers. I think you have to start Hooper. I don't think it's a great matchup, but it's not a horrendous matchup by any means. And like I said, or like we talked about with Ridley being down, there's a lot of targets there. Hooper was shut down last week, but he probably shouldn't be shut down this week. So I think Hooper's a good start this week. So it's Julio, Freeman, and Hooper for me. Matt Ryan's an okay start as well. I mean, Jacksonville over the past 5 weeks have allowed the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I don't love Matt Ryan, but there are some bad QB matchups out there, and he might be a back-end QB1 for all intents and purposes, so that should be fine. On the other side of the ball, like I said, the passing defense for Atlanta has been a lot better of late. They haven't necessarily shut down quarterbacks, but I mean, they are also not giving up a ton of points to quarterbacks. And Gardner Minshew has been kind of hit and miss towards the end of the season here. So I think that Gardner Minshew, you probably have better options than Gardner Minshew this week. So I'm not really trusting him. I think you have to start Shark if he plays, because I think he's going to get volume. Yeah. Leonard Fournette is a good start this week as well. Atlanta, I mean, they've been okay against the run, but Fournette gets like 90% of the touches in that backfield. So you cannot sit him at any point. So yeah, I mean, that's all I'm starting on Jacksonville's side too. If you start, like I said, if Shark sits, Conley is a great start. If Shark plays, Shark's the only one that I really want there.
Yeah. I think you pretty much hit that on the head. So we can go on to the next one here.
Baltimore Ravens at Cleveland Browns. This looks like it might be a high-scoring game. I don't necessarily agree with the over-under here of 49, but it has the Ravens by 9.5. So,
well, the Ravens are probably going to put up 50 by themselves. So,
well, mind you, they lost 40-25 the last time they played.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening. I think this Browns team is.
But sorry, I'm gonna pause here. We have a question in the chat here from Scott Sidlow, I believe. Half PPR, starting Debo over AJ Brown or Terry McLaurin.
Absolutely not. No.
AJ Brown has been on. AJ Brown's been on fire. Terry McLaurin faces Washington's. No, sorry, other way around. Terry McLaurin faces New York Giants secondary, which have been giving up monster amounts of points. And as much as I don't like Dwayne Haskins, this is a good matchup. So Debo, you sit Debo for both A.J. Brown and Terry McLaurin this week.
Yep, I agree.
All right, back to Baltimore at Cleveland. Let's get the obvious ones out of the way. You're starting Lamar Jackson. You're starting Mark Ingram. You're starting Nick Chubb. You're starting Mark Andrews. Okay. Now, Baker Mayfield's a horrendous start. Do not start Baker Mayfield this week.
That's a bad idea.
Nick
Chubb, you got to start.
Yeah. Nick Chubb gashed them for over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns last time they played. Nick Chubb is matchup proof. Is he Freddie Kitchens proof, though?
Yeah. I mean, I think he has shown that he is, even with little volume, even with Kareem Hunt basically negating most of his passing work. Mm-hmm. Nick Chubb is still just like absolutely destroying defenses. So
he's leading the league in rushing by almost 70 yards. Or no, almost 80 yards. Sorry. He's been absolutely dominant. And I mean, there are times like you may not love what Freddie Kitchens has done with his usage and like halves and stuff. Like he can just take away Chubb for a half and it makes 0 sense. Chubb honestly should be averaging 25 touches a game.
Yeah.
In my opinion, but you can't sit Chubb here. Chubb, like I said, last time they played Baltimore, 165 yards, 3 touchdowns. You're not sitting Chubb. Anybody else? I mean, Jarvis Landry has been relatively on fire here. All right, Trader Joe. We have Trader Joe, a Browns fan and a Baker Mayfield fan in the chat. That's fine. Baker Mayfield has been trash this season. Baltimore Ravens have been very good on defense, specifically since that game. You are not starting Baker in this game.
Yeah, take that. I'll just 6 stomp.
You're helpful. You're helpful.
I think Kareem Hunt. One, you have to start Nick Chubb. You're starting Nick Chubb. I think in a PPR, you've got to start Kareem Hunt as well. He's just getting too much work from a receiving end. I mean, since he came back, 9 targets, 8 targets, 3 targets, but he had a touchdown on the ground. 5 targets, 9 targets. He had 1 with 2, but he turned it into 40 yards, had another touchdown on the ground. I mean, as a running back 3, which is probably what you're using Kareem Hunt as, in a PPR, yeah, I definitely think you could use it because I think they're going to be behind. I think they're going to be throwing the ball quite a bit in this game. So I like Kareem Hunt as a flex option at running back. Mm-hmm. But outside of Chubb and Hunt, I'm pretty much out on this team. Man, that's tough to say because you got Landry and OBJ. If one of them scores a touchdown, but I just don't. No, I'm just going with the running backs. I'm playing it safe. And what do you think about that? I mean, would you start Landry or Odell? Odell's playing hurt right now.
I would not be starting Odell. No. With Marcus Peters, Jimmy Smith, and Marlon Humphreys on the outside, they have been susceptible to slot receivers though. So if you're going to play Landry, I would be playing. I mean, if you're going to play a wide receiver here, I would be playing Landry. They gave up 24 fantasy points to Jamison Crowder last week. Week 14, they gave up 10.9 to Cole Beasley, including a touchdown.
And Landry was the guy who totally ripped him up in that last game. I mean, he had 8 receptions for 167 yards.
Yeah,
he should have had a touchdown.
Edelman had 89 yards against them, so he had 11.9 points. There's another one here. Tyler Lockett had 61 yards and a touchdown. So if you're going to play a wide receiver here, I think it's going to be Landry. It's tough to sit Landry at this point because he's the hottest pass catcher for them. But yeah, I mean, that's the only one.
I would feel okay starting Landry. I don't think I would start OBJ.
No, absolutely not.
Kind of options because he's playing hurt. It's pretty clear just by looking at how he's playing. He's not feeling well, and I think that, like you said, he's probably going to get shut down with those outside guys. So I'm going with Landry.
Jarvis Landry's been getting volume.
That is like his whole life. He's been getting volume.
But he has 123 targets this season, over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. But yeah, I mean, I think it's Landry. If you're I get taking a chance on Baker Mayfield this week, but I can't do it because the Baltimore Ravens have been so good against quarterbacks this season, but specifically of late, or especially of late. Let me look here. From weeks 9 through 14, they allowed 9.9, 5, 6.4, 9.1, and 8.7 fantasy points to starting quarterbacks. And that includes guys like Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, Jimmy Garoppolo through this hot streak. Tom Brady was in there. So it's not like they're just shutting down scrubs here. And they've only given up one game over 18 fantasy points, and that was to Patrick Mahomes in week 3. This secondary has been phenomenal. This defense has been phenomenal. I just cannot take the chance on Baker Mayfield.
And there you go. I agree. Next one.
What about like Hollywood Brown? I mean, if you want to talk about it,
we're talking dart throws here.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking possible big games. There aren't very many guys in the league that are as fast as Marquise Brown. I could see him, if you're down by a significant amount of points, he is a guy that I would consider, just because I think that.
See, again, and I don't even know if that's
4 catches for. But
even then, though, like Lamar Jackson's just like, he's settled into what a lot of us thought he was going to be, where he's just going to throw for 150 yards to 200 yards, run for 80 plus yards, and get like 3 total touchdowns. So that's my issue.
That's totally underestimating Lamar Jackson. You'd be lucky if he only puts 3 on you.
But I mean, you understand the point, though, is in order for.
Do you think Brown is going to score a touchdown? Yes or no?
See, I don't know. He has to, but he's not going to get the yardage is the issue here.
See, I think he's boom or bust. I mean, I don't like
my issue is his boom game is not going to be as high as some other, like Will Fuller's boom game.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to be that
volume to do it.
Right. Well, it's not even about the volume for me. It's about, I mean, I guess it is kind of volume, but it's about the amount of throws that are going to occur. And like, in order for him to have a boom game to get over 100 yards, he's going to have 50% of like the air yards for a game. And I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on here. New Orleans Saints at Tennessee Titans, another game that is probably going to be relatively high scoring. I mean, New Orleans, though they did shut down the Colts, I think that was more on Jacoby Brissett than anything. They did allow Jimmy Garoppolo to absolutely feast 2 weeks ago. So kind of iffy defense here on both sides of the ball. We saw Drew Brees absolutely crush Indianapolis and San Francisco. So I don't think you're sitting Drew Brees. Ryan Tannehill has been arguably the hottest quarterback over the past or in the second half of the season. So I doubt you're going to be sitting him. I mean, I'm starting him in a championship game. So yeah, I mean, I think you start both of these quarterbacks. You start their star wide receivers, so both Michael Thomas and A.J. Brown. You start both of the star running backs in Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry. Alvin Kamara has obviously had a down year this year because of the touchdowns. However, the Titans are giving up, I believe, the second most receptions to running backs on the season, and this has an Alvin Kamara game written all over it for me.
Yeah, I could definitely see him being used quite a bit in this one. I don't think they're going to be able to stop him in the passing game, and the Saints are excellent at, if you can't stop one of their players, they just completely shove that person down your throat. Ask anybody who had to play Michael Thomas last week. Michael Thomas was open every single play for like 4 straight quarters. I mean, and they just kept throwing him the ball, and it was incredibly frustrating for a lot of people. So, I mean, I think Kamara could be that guy this week where they're just, I could see him getting 10 plus targets easily.
Well, and we've seen it in the past with Kamara. I mean, there were multiple games in the recent past that he was absolutely crushing. And he had gotten like 10 plus targets, I believe double-digit targets in multiple weeks there, as I'm looking for his fantasy production here. But yeah, I mean, he had back-to-back. Listen, he had a stretch where he went 7 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets, 10 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets. Like, he's still getting the targets. He's just not getting in the end zone. So that's the issue. I do think this is an Alvin Kamara week. I do think he will be fine. So yeah, I mean, I would not be sitting Alvin Kamara this week. By the way, he only has 2 games below 12 fantasy points this season. So he's very, very solid. And while you may not get that super ceiling from him, at the very least, you're probably getting 15 fantasy points from him. I think Jared Cook is a decent start this week as well, by the way. The Titans have not, especially of late, have not been good against the tight ends. Titans, tight ends.
Titans.
They allowed Jack Doyle to go for 16.3. They allowed Travis Kelce to go for 17. They've allowed Hunter Henry to go for 12.7. Austin Hooper, 17.5. Jared Cook has been heavily involved in this passing game since, let's look here, because since about week 5 against Tampa Bay in PPR formats, he's had double-digit fantasy points in every week except for last week where he had 9.4. So he is kind of the pass catcher 3 for this offense. It's a very
he's actually second on the team in yards.
Well, there you go. It's a very funneled offense. You basically have 3 pass catchers you can trust. Traquan Smith has been flashing a little bit, but
Taysom Hill. No, I'm just kidding. Don't put Taysom Hill in your.
But yeah, so Jared Cook's not a bad start either this week. On the other side, Jonnu Smith. I don't know.
I don't hate it because he's getting the ball thrown to him. He's a tight end. That's really all it takes,
right?
To be any good as a tight end. If you can just get some volume, maybe he's a pretty good athlete. So if he gets if like they brought up in the chat, if Lattimore is working on Brown, AJ Brown, I could see Jonnu being used a little bit more. Let's put it that way.
I'm not concerned about Lattimore and Brown. They'll move Brown around enough to get him the ball. Yeah. Tannehill will get him the ball as well. But I mean, looking at the tight end, or New Orleans Saints against the tight ends, they give up good, decent, or a good fantasy day to George Kittle. They gave up one to Jaden Graham with Austin Hooper out against Atlanta. Cameron Brate had a monster day. Charles Clay had a relatively big day. He had 88 yards against them. And this is Arizona uses the tight end the fewest or the least in the league. And Charles Clay had 88 yards on him. So not a bad start. Jonnu is extremely athletic as well, as we saw. I believe he had a
57-yard rush attempt.
So,
which is bonkers for a tight end. Are you kidding me? If you even used him as a rusher is unreal.
If you're struggling against or with your tight ends this week, think about Jonnu Smith. Other than that, I mean, like I mentioned, Derrick Henry. You're not sitting Derrick Henry.
No.
Not anybody else that I really love. I mean, Corey Davis has just kind of fallen off the wayside here.
Nope. You just stay away.
Though I believe that Derrick Henry has popped up on the injury report this week.
Derrick Henry has been dealing with an injury for the last couple weeks. It looks like he is expected to play. But he didn't practice. He practiced Wednesday. He is dealing with a hamstring injury. This is actually something to watch going into the end of the weekend. So definitely need to follow me on Twitter because I'm going to be updating you as I can here. Because Henry practiced on Wednesday and then didn't practice on Thursday. So that's a downgrade. And again, with these hamstrings, it's the first 2 weeks. As soon as they come back, that's when they're most likely to re-injure it. So
yeah, I mean, watch
it.
Watch the news there. Pick up Dion Lewis probably now if you can, just in case, because he could have a decent game. Though New Orleans against running backs, it's not a fantastic matchup, so there's probably better options out there. Moving on, Carolina Panthers at Indianapolis Colts. So again, two bad defenses once more, but Carolina Panthers seem to want to start Will Grier here, so that's throwing a wrench into a lot of things. I think it affects the pass catchers there. I don't think you can really afford to sit DJ Moore, but it's definitely kind of a scary proposition, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, with Greer's start, we don't know what we're going to get from Grier. I mean, I know that you liked him coming out of college. I actually liked him quite a bit too. I've got some family from West Virginia, so I watched a few of those games, and I thought Grier had some. I won't say that he was as polished as some of the other guys in the class, but he definitely had that kind of swagger, and I could see this being a defense that he could show off a little bit of swagger and kind of have a little bit of mojo. If he gets on a roll, he can do some things that I think he could surprise some people with this game. So it's a tough spot though, because we haven't seen him, and I didn't think he was ready to start coming out of college, but he is an older prospect. He's probably going to be a little bit more poised. He's one of those guys, based on what I saw in college, that he's not afraid to take a few shots down the field. And he could use his legs a little bit as well. So while I'm not recommending starting Grier, I don't think it's the absolute worst thing that's happened to DJ Moore.
Yep.
So,
but I mean, they are playing Indianapolis, and listen to these stats since week 11. DJ Chark had 26.4 fantasy points. DeAndre Hopkins at 24.4. In that same game, Will Fuller had 17.5. Khalif Raymond had 10.5 against, he had one 40-yard touchdown, but he had 10.5 against the Colts for Tennessee. We'll keep going down here in week 14. Rashad Perryman, 14.5. Justin Watson, 14.4. Mike Evans, 12.6. Chris Godwin, 12.6. Michael Thomas at 24.8. So they've been giving up a lot of fantasy points to wide receivers of late. So yeah, DJ Moore is good enough to get open. If they just do screens and stuff to him, that should give him a decent day. But I think this is going to be a huge day for Christian McCaffrey. So while Christian McCaffrey has been a monster this entire season, this is going to be your championship winning week from Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion. And I know that's not even a hot take at any point. It's just like, duh. But this could end up being like a 40-point type of game, with all the dump downs and stuff that could happen.
Yeah. I think McCaffrey is just going to smash. That's not really saying much though. He's been the most locked in. Him and Lamar Jackson are the two. You don't even think about it.
Yep.
You just start them and go. So,
but yeah, other than that, have we heard any word about Greg Olsen coming back?
Yeah. So he actually is planning on, he will be available if they choose to let him play. He did clear concussion protocol. So
I'll just say this. It doesn't matter. Even like Curtis Samuel's very touchdown dependent. You're not trusting Curtis Samuel this week. You're not trusting either of Ian Thomas or Greg Olsen. So it's basically the DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey McShow.
The McShow. It's time for the McShow.
On the other side of the ball, Jacoby Brissett looked atrocious.
He looked real bad.
So I think that maybe they'll be looking for a future QB here in the next draft.
Yeah, they extended him, but man, I just don't see how they don't try to pick somebody up. Shouldn't
have cut Chad Kelly there. As stupid as Chad Kelly is. But this might be a T.Y. Hilton game.
I don't like.
I get it.
Calf injury. I really don't. I don't trust him. His explosion didn't look great. He did have targets. I mean, he got fed targets, so the volume is there.
I get it, but Carolina is so bad against slot receivers. Like, so bad. I can't emphasize that enough. Tyler Lockett at 20. I mean, after Tyler Lockett's stretch of 3 games there where nobody was trusting him, 22 fantasy points, 120 yards and a touchdown. Calvin Ridley, 143 yards and a touchdown. I mean, I could go down the list here as I'm trying to find them. Chris Godwin, 151 yards and a touchdown. D.D. Westbrook, 82 yards, 7 for 11 for 82 yards. Larry Fitzgerald had 36 yards and a touchdown. Chris Godwin, another 121 yards. Cooper Kupp had 47 of 10 for 46 yards. Like, they are bad against slot receivers. And like you said, he got fed targets last week. And I think this is a week where T.Y. Hilton shows up.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have – you want to talk about a team that's just hurting at wide receiver right now. I mean, basically no Paris Campbell, no Chester Rogers. Eric Ebron's on IR. Devin Funchess, if he's still on the team, I'm pretty sure he ended up on IR. So you got Hilton, Pascal, and Marlon Mack. Naheem Hines, I guess, is going to be their third best receiver. I mean, for me, Marlon Mack's the only guy I trust in this game.
You know what's funny? I don't like. No. And no. Here's the issue: is Marlon Mack has been so bad since he returned from injury. November and December, he has been atrocious.
Yeah.
And I understand that this is a fantastic matchup, but when you look at the snaps, he is splitting snaps with almost 50-50 with Jordan Wilkins. Jordan Wilkins got the touchdown last week. He's not involved in the pass game. So while Marlon Mack might be a decent flex play this week,
he's a risky decent.
Yeah, like play. You can't. I can't trust him. Yeah, I mean, I get starting Marlon Mack, but I can't trust him. Like, this is why you have to look at all the information, because yes, the matchup's fantastic, but Marlon Mack has not been the same as he was at the start of the season. So yes, start Marlon Mack as a flex, but it is risky for a championship game for me. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think Jack Doyle, you almost have to start in most situations. I mean, unless you have a fantastic tight end situation, you have to start Jack Doyle because he has been getting volume. T.Y. Hilton, I think, is a great start this week. And then Marlon Mack, probably the only other start here. I think this is going to be a high concentration of targets and fantasy points in between like 4 or 5 players in this game. We do have a question in the chat from Scott Sidlow again. T.Y. Hilton or John Brown? It's T.Y. Hilton for me because of matchup. John Brown's matchup is just atrocious.
Bad, man. It's real bad.
and T.Y. Hilton, like I said, I mean, despite the calf injury, has a good matchup because the Panthers have been terrible against the slot receivers.
I'm probably going to go Hilton too. Stompy's got me convinced. I am not 100% sold on this calf injury, but I think just from a volume perspective, even with not being 100%, he still got 9 targets last week. So, and that was with Brissett looking pretty bad. I think Brissett has a decent game, and I think you got to go with Smokey Brown. I love him this year, but this is bad. He's not going to do well. I just don't see any way that's well.
The thing is, he can get volume, but again, you're just not messing with New England. Like, I can't mess with New England in a championship game. Our friend James Catulus, co-host James Catulus in the chat, has a non-fantasy question. He caught up on Letterkenny. By the way, if you haven't watched Letterkenny, fantastic. But are there any other shows that we recommend? I said Big Mouth. I love Big Mouth. I think Big Mouth is awesome. It's too relatable. I don't know if you've watched that, James.
I had a joke, but you already took it. You hit yourself with it. You jumped on your own grenade. I love it.
Oh no. Do you know what Big Mouth's about?
I don't.
It's about puberty. And it's very relatable for everybody.
My wife doesn't let me watch cartoon shows, so I'm not allowed to watch those kinds of shows.
Why?
But we have been watching Designated Survivor on Netflix, and I'm
get
very
out of here!
impressed.
No, get out of here with your
very impressed with it. The first season is top-notch television. So,
James, I think I'll have to get back to you on it. I'm in the middle of watching South Park right now.
Oh, I love South Park. See, this hurts me bad because I like those shows, but sometimes you know when you watch shows with other people, you got to make sacrifices.
James, I'll have to get back to you because like I said, I mean, I'm in the middle of South Park.
If you've never watched Rick and Morty, that's a great freaking show.
Yeah,
but it's not for everybody. Let's put it that way.
Well, we'll move on here. Cincinnati Bengals at Miami Dolphins. This could be another low-key, high-scoring game. Not a lot of good defense going on here. Though Cincinnati has been relatively or under the radar fantastic against wide receivers this season. They've allowed the sixth fewest fantasy points over the last 5 weeks. On the season, they've allowed the seventh fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. Low key, they've been fantastic. So that's kind of an issue with Devontae Parker, though. And I read a stat from, I can't remember who. I think it was Jamie Moyer, Jay Moyer on Twitter. He works for the RSP with Matt Waldman. Pointed out that Ryan Fitzpatrick is fourth in percentage of tight window throws. And that's perfect for Devontae Parker because he doesn't get separation, but he's fantastic at those 50-50 balls. So I don't think you can afford to sit Devontae Parker this week. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a good streamer this week, and he might be better than guys like Josh Allen, might be better than guys like Jared Goff, Jimmy Garoppolo, Tom Brady. Like there's some bad matchups out there, and maybe you start Fitzpatrick there.
Yeah, I actually like Fitzpatrick as a solid QB2 this week. That could give you a big game. So, I mean, Fitz is not afraid to throw those tight window throws, so it's not surprising. I would love to see where he ranks as far as like the number of throws he's taken in those tight windows. But Devontae Parker, I think you can start. As far as Miami goes, that's really. I mean, Mike Gesicki maybe could be an option. I don't really
like
sold.
it. Yeah, I don't like it because Cincinnati over the last 4 weeks. Let me look up my stats here. Over the last 4 weeks, or specifically over the last 5 weeks, given up the fourth fewest points. But looking at the last 4 weeks, and mind you, they haven't played great tight ends. 5.5, 1.4, 2.7, 0.9, 0, and 3.7 fantasy points to tight ends. They haven't given up a double-digit fantasy game since week 11. So they've been pretty good against tight ends, and I just don't trust Mike Gesicki.
I see it's hard, though, because he's still getting the volume. I mean, we're talking dating back to week 9, he's had six or more targets in every game but one. He had 5 targets in one game, but every other game besides that, he's had at least 6 targets. So I understand it's not a good matchup, but I just don't. I think there's worse tight end matchups out there. You probably shouldn't be starting him, but again, if you're talking about a dynasty team that this is your only option, I don't hate it, but I'm probably looking for somebody else. But again, who else is going to catch passes? I mean, it's
Albert Wilson.
I knew you were going to say Albert Wilson.
By the way, I have to wear a leotard for a bet I made with Liz Loza for that. So,
and I think
even though I'm not gonna win the Scott Fish Bowl, you're gonna still see me in a leotard.
Worth it. Worth it. As far as
um,
Cincinnati goes, Tyler Boyd must start. Joe Mixon must
Yep.
start.
Yep.
I think that Andy Dalton.
John Ross.
I wouldn't.
That's a tough
I
one.
wouldn't.
I think Tyler Boyd's going to get the volume. Joe Mixon has been fantastic the second half of the season. Other than that, there's nothing that I'm loving. I mean, Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton is a streaming option. Let's not forget about the running backs for Miami. Patrick Laird has, I believe, 15 touches in 3 straight weeks, including 5 targets in 3 straight weeks. Now, he did split, I believe, even 50-50 with Myles Gaskins last week. But with those targets and how he's been used in the passing game, I don't mind Patrick Laird as a flex this week.
I don't trust Patrick Laird, but again, I don't think that it's a horrible from a volume perspective. It's fine for fantasy, but I would have a hard time. You'd probably find a better flex option than Patrick Laird. Let's put it that way.
But I mean, even if we are in week 16 with all of the injuries that have occurred,
I mean, there's going to be teams that are going to have to start him just from.
I just think that Patrick Laird can give you a double-digit fantasy day, and you're fine with that.
Yeah.
But that's fine. I agree. Like,
well,
there are definitely better options.
This is key. AJ Green is unlikely to play due to a hamstring strain.
You're kidding.
I know. I'm telling you, I was shocked to see
strain
this.
after a foot injury.
After a foot injury. Who would have thunked it? I think that just from my AJ Green take alone at this preseason, you should go follow me on Twitter, because I told you drafting AJ Green with a foot injury in the preseason was the dumbest thing that you could do. And sure enough, he hasn't played a game this year. So I'm going to just take that as I told you so. You shouldn't draft injured players in the preseason. That is you just take that, and that's like one of my 5 rules for fantasy football injuries is like, you don't draft players that get injured in the preseason. If they're going to miss a significant amount of time to start the year, that is not a good player to have on your team. Just my opinion. Besides that, I think we're pretty much done with this game. I don't see anybody else that really need to talk about. Pittsburgh
at New York Jets. I'm pretty much done with this game. So we don't really need to talk about that.
I see how it's going to be.
I mean,
it looks like Mason Rudolph's going to start.
The over-under is 39.
That is generous.
Yeah. So I don't like anybody for New York. I mean, I legitimately hate everybody for New York. Like, Lev Bell's probably not going to have a good game. Pittsburgh has been a top 5 defense against the run.
I like the defenses.
There you go.
In this game,
there you go.
If you're playing a defense special team, the Steelers are looking good. And you can probably put the Jets up off waivers.
So the Steelers, on both sides of both against the pass and the run have been fantastic. Have not allowed a 100-yard rusher this season. There was a stretch there where they didn't even allow a double-digit fantasy game to a running back. I don't think Le'Veon Bell's a good start this week. Robbie Anderson's definitely not a good start this week. Crowder, that's the one hole that they have in that defense is in the slot. So Crowder's an okay start this week, or maybe a flex start. If you would, it's not great, but he's been getting the volume here. So I don't mind Crowder this week. I mean, do you disagree with that? I mean, Landry caught 6 of 11 for 76 yards. Tyler Boyd went for 101 and a touchdown. Landry went for 43 and a touchdown the previous week. Kupp's disappeared off the face of the planet. I mean, if you're going to start any of the pass catchers, it's Crowder. But this Pittsburgh defense has been fantastic. On the other side of the ball, is Juju playing?
It looks like he is. It looks like he is. He did get a full practicing on Thursday. That's usually a telltale sign that he's going to play. And I'm just looking up basically those games that he played with Mason Rudolph. It did look like he had a few good games with Rudolph. So if Rudolph ends up getting the start, which he's getting first team reps in practice right now. So they're eyeing a change at quarterback. It's Rudolph or Hodges. They've been doing this with Hodges. Now seems like they're going back to Rudolph. With Rudolph at the helm, Juju had an 8 for 84. He had a touchdown in the game, 81 yards and a touchdown, 75 yards, 7 catches and a touchdown. Again, these aren't against good necessarily defenses. That 75 and the touchdown was against Baltimore, but that was in week 5. So again, I don't hate Juju coming back, but he's a really risky wide receiver 3. And that is 100% assuming that Mason Rudolph is the quarterback, and it's not Devlin Hodges. If Hodges is the quarterback, you just stay away from all of them.
I don't know if I disagree with that. I think because of Washington's ADOT, he might be an okay flex. I mean, he's done okay with Hodges. It's not my favorite start by any stretch of the imagination, but again, if we're looking at taking swings here, I think Washington is the guy to own here.
Yeah, so to me, that just says you just stay away from all of them.
No, I agree, but I mean, like, let's look at what he's done. I mean, 3 of the past 4 weeks, he's had 83 or more yards through the receiving yards. He's had 2 touchdowns in that time frame as well. So Washington is the boom guy here.
Yeah, and they're using him downfield too, which is
right.
Which is basically the biggest advantage that he has, and he's been playing well. I mean, I still feel like Juju's probably going to command the targets if he's playing, but we'll see kind of how that split goes. Again, if you got better options, I would find a better option.
I think I agree with that. It's not a good situation with those quarterbacks. They're going to lean heavy on the run. Speaking of, James Conner probably gets 10 to 15 touches, but he only played 50% of the snaps last week. They're not going to give him the full load like they did earlier in the season. Though Benny Snell only had 2 snaps last week. Conner had 34. Jalen Samuels had 17. Why would they give Benny Snell only 2 snaps?
I mean, obviously they think Conner is the guy, and that game was close for most of the game. So yeah, I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't really understand it. I thought Snell was playing well when Conner was hurt. So you would have thought that they would have worked those 2 in together, but it seems like whenever Conner's playing, I say that, but the Steelers for the last 5 years, Mike Tomlin has always been a guy that he feeds his number 1 running back. And we see it as soon as Conner came back, he was getting fed. So I mean, we should have expected it, I guess, at this point.
I think I agree there. I mean, I'm starting Conner in places. There's just some skepticism of him getting the full load. But, I mean, he got 50%, saw 58% of the snaps. So probably should run him out there. This is going to be a pretty ugly game, in my opinion. Really only trust Conner. I mean, I really only trust Conner in this game.
Yeah.
New York Giants at Washington. Washington, I will not say that, so we're going to call them Washington Football Club.
Okay.
Over-unders 42. Again, 2 bad defenses here. I'm not starting Dwayne Haskins because I just absolutely not. Terry McLaurin, decent start. I mean, New York has been terrible against wide receivers this season, and now they don't have Janoris Jenkins. So Terry McLaurin, great start this week. Saquon in this game. Obviously, Washington hasn't been good against running backs. Darius Slayton I believe Daniel Jones is playing.
It looks like Jones is recovered from his ankle. He's working with the starters, so it looks like he's playing. So Darius Slayton could be a guy. Sterling Shepard looked pretty good last week. He's been dealing with kind of concussions and things, but he had 11 targets, 9 receptions, 111 yards. That's against Miami. Again, Washington is probably the second best option, or third best. He can't play against his own team. So in terms of pass catchers going up against a team, Shepard actually had 7 receptions for 76 yards and a rushing attempt for 23 yards back in week 4 against Washington. So that's a guy that I think in a PPR league, or if you get any points for receptions, I think Shepard and Slayton are both pretty fair options.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, Golden Tate has just stopped, has not been a target of late. Other than that, I mean, I'm not trusting any. Ingram's been shut down. I don't think that Rhett Ellison's playing. I mean, Caden Smith in a pinch. Listen. Washington's been in the last 5 weeks. Washington has been terrible against tight ends. They gave up 109 yards and a touchdown to Ryan Griffin. They gave up a touchdown to Daniel Brown. They gave up 24 yards and a touchdown to Logan Thomas. They gave up a touchdown to Robert Tonyan. Zach Ertz obviously had a good game last week. So I guess with Caden Smith, you're hoping for a touchdown, really, because with Sterling Shepard, with Saquon, with Darius Slayton, he's 4th in terms of pass catchers.
Yeah, it's pretty much touchdown or bust. Again, I'm probably not starting him anywhere if I can avoid it. Unless you're in a really deep league that starts multiple tight ends.
What about Adrian Peterson? I don't like Adrian Peterson personally, but he's getting volume.
As in, you don't like him as a person, or
well, yes,
you don't
that,
like him
but
this week.
I don't like him hitting his children with a switch, but
that's good. You probably shouldn't. If you're a normal human being, you should be pretty upset about that. You shouldn't hit your kids.
But I believe the Giants have actually been decent against the run this season. They did give up a big game to Boston Scott in that overtime loss.
I would say Peterson's hard. Peterson's hard for me because, again, who's he competing with touches for? I mean, you could see him theoretically. He should get, he could have 20 touches, and at running back, I could see him hitting that 10-point threshold for.
You can hold my flesh.
I'm getting tired. You can tell. My threshold. No. I mean, he's gotten a touchdown in each of his last 3 games.
Yeah.
He even had 3 receptions last week, which is unbelievable because he is terrible at catching balls.
Against New York, the last time they won 24-3, but he only had 28 yards on 11 carries.
Yeah. So again, I don't see how I could see playing him from a volume perspective. He's been consistent the last 3 weeks. I don't see him putting up a dud for you in this game like he did in week 4. I don't see that happening just because I think he has less competition now. It's pretty clear that they're going to want to run the ball. I would say flex option, and I would be comfortable with that just from a volume perspective.
Fair enough. We will move on from there. Detroit Lions at Denver Broncos. The lowest scoring game of the week, according to the line here, the over-under line, 37.5. I can't disagree with it. Unfortunately.
I don't know where those points are going to come from. Somebody's Drew Lock. I mean, I think Drew Lock could.
I like Drew Lock
a game.
I like Drew Lock this week because Detroit has been bad against quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Drew Lock has had 2 out of 3 games. He's been great. He actually threw for over 200 yards last week in the snow. So it's not like he was horrendous last week by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. And he's going up against Kansas City. I mean, I'm
Right.
pretty sure he was in Kansas City, which is a tough place to play. So
the Lions have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on a season. They also allow a lot of fantasy points to running backs. So I actually like Phillip Lindsay in this game as well.
yeah.
I also like Cortland Sutton in this game. And I like Noah Fant. So I really like the Denver Broncos. Listen, he
is going to be in Colorado this weekend.
Okay, yes. But like if you really look at it, there's not a lot to dislike about the Denver Broncos this week, except for a rookie quarterback. On the other hand, Detroit, David Bluff blog is awful. He looked good for about
a half, man.
He does. He looked good for about a half of football against the Chicago Bears, and then has been terrible since. Even against Tampa Bay, he was terrible. And so I'm sitting Kenny Golladay in a lot of places for like Brashad Perryman because of that. Now, what about Kerryon Johnson?
He has come out and said he's hoping he can play. He's eligible to come off, but I don't think we've heard anything about them letting him come off the IR yet. He looks good in practice, so I think he could be a workhorse this week. I mean, I really do. I think if he comes in and he plays,
he could.
A few weeks ago, I said on this show, I said you should pick up Kerryon Johnson because he could come back in week 16 if you think you're going to win. And even if you don't think you're going to win, if you made the playoffs and Kerryon Johnson's for free, pick him up. Who knows what's going to happen? And, week 14 killed a bunch of people with injuries.
Mm-hmm.
If you manage to make it through to week 16, make it through that, Kerryon Johnson could easily be starting for you. And I think if he plays, they're going to feed him because Bo Scarborough is hurt. He's been limited in practice.
Mm-hmm.
Wes Hills is an undrafted free agent. I mean, he is the only thing that Wes Hills could do is he could rumble in for a 1-yard touchdown. If they don't want to put Kerryon in that kind of predicament where he's running into a stacked box, I could see them bringing Wes Hills in to run straight ahead. I mean, Wes Hills he's a big boy, so he's like 220 and 6'1". So, I mean, I could see him vulturing a touchdown and that being a real bummer. But for the most part, I could see Johnson, if he plays this week, being a workhorse and getting a fair amount of volume. So I don't hate it.
Yeah. And if we really think about it, Galladay's not in a great matchup with Chris Harris. Danny Amendola's not a bad start. He's been kind of feeding over the past few weeks. So Danny Amendola might not be a bad start though. Well, nope. Kareem Jackson is out for the rest of the season, or he's been suspended for the rest of the season. So Amendola is not a bad start. So really, we're looking at Kerryon and probably Amendola. I get wanting to start Golladay, but it's just not a great matchup, and it's a bad quarterback situation. So that's where I'm at. I mean,
yep.
Do you have anything else to add for this game?
Nope. I think that's it. We can go to the next one.
Oakland Raiders at Los Angeles Chargers. Two really gross quarterbacks. I'll tell you what, Tyrell Williams is an auto set for me. Josh Jacobs is out.
Yep. So DeAndre Washington, I think.
DeAndre Washington is a good flex start this week. The Los Angeles Chargers have not been good against the run this season. Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler, good starts, though. I am starting Mike Boone, and we'll talk about him.
Mike Boone
over Austin Eckler this week.
Ooh, I don't know how I feel about that, but
if he's the only running back there,
that's tough, man. Eckler's been so good.
No, I get it, but Mike Boone's going to get like Dalvin Cook 20 touches. Good. Like, and he crushed last week, and he's got a great matchup in Green Bay.
Gosh, oh man, that is. Can you start both? I think I would put them on similar.
You want to know what this running back core looks like? It's Chubb, Kamara, Eckler, Boone, Boston Scott. So
okay, well, you got to start Chubb and you got to start Kamara.
So I'm between. Oh, and Devonta Freeman, by the way.
I would put Eckler and Boone in the same tier this week. I think they both have similar upside. Maybe Boone has a little bit more touchdown upside. I don't know, man. I like Eckler a lot. He is.
No, I do too, but
he's getting so much work in the pass game. He's been so efficient.
The last time they played, he got 8 touches to Gordon's 23.
I mean, I think he did score a touchdown though, so
that's fine. I would rather take the chance on volume.
Okay. I think the argument is there, and it's ultimately your fantasy team, so you start who you want. I would personally probably start Eckler, but I understand, given the running back circumstances that you've got in that particular league, why you would go with Mike Boone, because Boone's going to probably have the bigger boom week, because he's going to get all the volume. So he is the safe RB3 when you have Chubb and Kamara as your first 2 RBs. And I don't blame that logic. I mean, for me personally, take the guaranteed.
We've gone on a tangent here. So Oakland Raiders at Los Angeles Chargers. Eckler and Gordon are good starts. Hunter Henry, always a good start.
Yep.
Keenan Allen, always a good start.
Yep.
What about Mike Williams? I'm never going to trust Mike Williams ever. That's just that's how it's going to be.
I'm kind of the same way. I think he is he's a tough sell for me. You just don't know what you're going to get. And he's been playing well, but you're talking off of huge catches.
Yeah.
I mean, big, if he doesn't make that big play.
No, and that's my issue with him is like he needs that 50-yard play to give you a good week.
Yeah. And his volume isn't super consistent.
I mean he has gotten 2 touchdowns last 2 weeks, so
I don't know.
I'm with you. I can't trust him. Because my issue is he doesn't have the boom week. Like he's caught 2 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, but he didn't have the 150 and yarded touchdown game or the 150 and 2 touchdown game.
Which means that one's coming now that we've said he'll never do it.
On the other side, it's Darren Waller and not much else.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Washington, if you are hurting bad from injuries and things, he's not a horrible start because he did play, we did see him used both on the ground and through the pass game the last time he was a starter and Jacobs sat. So, again, not a huge upside guy, but I mean, I think from a volume perspective, I would put him above probably Adrian Peterson, my personal belief this week, just because he's giving you that. I think he's giving you that passing floor, and that's, if you're talking RB3s, man, that's a nice thing to have. So,
yeah, I'm with you. All right, on to our next game here: Dallas Cowboys at Philadelphia Eagles. Dak has that shoulder injury.
Yeah, and I haven't really seen much on this. I mean, I haven't seen anything that would indicate that he's not going to play. This is a big game for them. But they're talking about he's got an AC joint sprain. They're talking he might not throw until Saturday, which is like worst case scenario for me, because that means he's probably not. I think he's going to play, but we're not going to hear anything about it on an injury report this week because he's not going to throw until Saturday. So, Cooper Rush is taking snaps. I mean, this isn't ideal for Dak Prescott, but I still think he plays because it's a big game and he's trying to get paid. And, I don't think he's a horrible start against the Eagles. So
what do you think about Amari and Gallup then with those two, or with the shoulder?
I think I would trust Cooper, but that wide receiver 2 Gallup, I just don't. I don't know. I think this is going to be a Ezekiel Elliott 30 touch game. And I think he's really the only one you can trust for sure. And to me, you would go with Cooper, and then Gallup is.
I actually really like Gallup in this game, if
Okay.
not for that shoulder injury. Because the outside cornerbacks are not good for Philadelphia. But yeah, that shoulder hit injury makes me really hesitate. So I don't know. Like Terry McLaurin at 21.5, Darius Slayton at 29.9, Devontae Parker at 31.4. Like those outside cornerbacks are bad, and I think Gallup could have a big game this week. But that shoulder makes me hesitate.
Yeah, and they didn't throw a ton with him last week. I know that he was hurt, but I mean, so far this year, he has only had 2 games where Dak has thrown for less than 30 pass attempts. And the last one was against Philly. He had 27 pass attempts. He threw for a touchdown, interception. He did have 5 rushes for 30 yards, which is, that's a nice little bonus there that he can give you. But that was against Philly in week 7. So, and then last week he had 23 pass attempts. So if he hadn't thrown the ball, he's not giving you that Lamar Jackson floor at running. I mean, he can give you a few points running, but not anywhere near the safety that Lamar Jackson can give you.
But can you afford to sit Dak is the better question.
Probably not. In most SuperFlex leagues, if he plays, you got to play him. And this is a big game. And while Dak is not known for being a big game quarterback, I think that this team's going to get fired up enough. And I think he's played well enough against their defense is not going to be able to stop him if he really wants to throw. So Zeke's a must start for me. I think Dak.
It's so inopportune, that injury. It's just like, oh, are you kidding?
Worst case for sure.
I really don't like Jason Witten in this game. The Eagles have given up the 5th fewest fantasy points to tight ends on the season. They've only given up double-digit fantasy points to 3 tight ends this season, so I don't like Jason Witten in this game. Obviously, you're starting Zeke. Other than that, probably not Cobb, probably not Jarwin, so we don't really need to talk about them. On the other side, get the obvious out of the way, it's Ertz. Scott Sidlow in the chat. Last question, Goddard or OJ Howard? It's got to be OJ Howard for me because Goddard doesn't have the volume, and I think OJ Howard has that volume to this week.
Yeah, I would say, gosh, I mean, we say it hasn't had the volume, but Goddard's had 6. Okay, so we got dating back to the bye. So that was in week 10. He's had 6 targets, 8 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets. The volume isn't that much different than what OJ Howard has been getting. I just think OJ Howard gives you a higher ceiling than Goddard does. I think Ertz is going to eat. This wide receiver core is hurt, and they're not getting any better. Arcega-Whiteside is hurt. He's got a foot injury. Nelson Aguilar's got a knee injury. He isn't practicing. He's not likely to play.
Greg Ward is probably the wide receiver 1 this week.
I mean, he is, and I don't like Greg Ward. I don't trust wide receiver 3s that are now wide receiver 1s.
Well, I'm trusting Perryman, so you better start.
Well, yeah, but Jameis Winston throws the ball a lot more than what Carson Wentz throws. So I don't hate Goddard as a tight end. I think he's got, low end, especially in a PPR league. Throw him in there. If you want the safety of probably 10 points, 11 points from your tight end, we've seen OJ Howard just disappear at this time. So if you want the safety, I think you go with Goddard. If you need to win and you're a dog in the projections, I think you go OJ Howard for the upside from that passing offense. But I don't hate either of those guys. So I would say Goddard and Ertz are both fine tight end starts. Ertz is a must start always, but I don't hate Goddard as a floor tight end.
I think I can agree with that. We can talk about those wide receivers if we want, but Dallas ranks, they have allowed the 8th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. So not a great look for JJ Arthego-Whiteside and Gray Ward here. So I don't think those two are good starts at all. Miles Sanders is a good start. Boston Scott's an interesting start this week.
I don't hate it, but I have a hard time trusting those. Running backs that aren't. It's not like he has a stranglehold on. He's been good last few weeks.
Yeah, he's been heavily involved in the pass game is the big thing here.
Yeah, and they don't have receivers, so I don't hate it. Actually, I don't hate it. Looking at his stats for the last couple of weeks, he's gotten 13 targets. He's caught all those passes. He's getting some rushing upside too. I would put him right there with like Kareem Hunt in terms of I think he's a fine flex option just from a volume perspective. And they don't have any pass catchers. So who knows where they're putting him for these targets. I mean, we could see Boston Scott out in the slot. I mean, we could see them moving him kind of all over the place. So
with injuries, Boston Scott is not the worst flex in the world.
Yes.
Arizona Cardinals at Seattle Seahawks. We'll get through these last 3 games really quickly. Cardinals, Kenyon Drake's a good start. Christian Kirk, maybe.
He's been hurt, and I think he's planning on returning. But gosh, I'm not a Christian Kirk believer, so I think he is. He's been limited. He didn't practice on Wednesday. He's limited. There's a chance he doesn't even play. I'm probably staying away.
Yeah, I don't think I like any of the pass catchers here whatsoever. I mean, Fitz might get you some floor type points, maybe low end double digits, but it's not great. And I heard JJ Zacharyson say a stat on his podcast, something about that Kyler Murray is on pace for the fewest or the second fewest fantasy points produced by a top 10 pick ever. A top 10, sorry, not top 10 pick, but top 10 QB ever, or top 10 QB of the last decade or something like that.
Is that with like any kind of given certain number of starts? I mean, I'm sure that there's
I think it's I think it obviously has to be with a certain number of starts. I would have to.
He has no. That team is so.
I understand, I mean, but he has not looked good either.
I don't think he is. He looked better than Josh Rosen looked in that offense last year. I mean, that team has so many holes on offense. DJ's hurt constantly. Kenyon Drake looked amazing. So I think you can. God, Kenyon Drake he kills me. I traded Kenyon Drake earlier this year.
It's not. I mean, that offensive line is bad. This game is going to be controlled, I'm guessing, on the ground by Seattle. Mm-hmm. Chris Carson is probably he's one of the best
dunk.
He's one of the best running back plays this week. T.Y. Hilton's a good play as well, and I actually don't mind Russell Wilson this week as a back end QB1. This is
back in. Russell Wilson, gosh, where was this stat at? I cannot remember it for the life of me, but he plays out of his mind when the projected point total is high, and I don't see how he's going to feast on these guys.
Fair enough. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be a Seattle Seahawks, so it's going to be Carson. DK Metcalf's not a bad start. I already said Tyler Lockett, Russ, and then on the other side, I mean, I don't know if I want to start Kyler.
I am staying away if I can.
So, yeah.
I don't actually own very much Kyler, I'll be honest. I don't draft Kyler. I don't really draft rookie quarterbacks and redraft. And I didn't have a top 2 pick in most of my dynasty leagues, so I don't really have him there either. So
it was such a humble brag.
Well, I mean, I don't play in a ton of leagues. I only have like 3 dynasty leagues, so I just don't.
So I mean, pass catchers are kind of rough this week. So it's really Kenyon Drake on the other side for me, and you. Yep. It sounds
Yep.
Kansas City Chiefs at Chicago Bears.
Start all the Chiefs.
Start all of the Chiefs. Really, it's only 3 Chiefs, but
Start all 3 of them.
All 3. So it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Tyreek Hill, it's Travis Kelce. On the other side, I mean, I don't know how you can get away from Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller, but
Anthony Miller's been balling out.
I know, but like the Cincinnati Bengals, the Kansas City Chiefs have been very good against wide receivers this season. So they've allowed the second fewest fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. Though they gave up 20.3 to Edelman. They gave up 17.1 to Keenan Allen as well. So it seems like maybe there's a little bit of a hole in terms of the slot receivers. Mm-hmm. So maybe Anthony Miller's the guy to start here. But what about
Miller's going to eat?
What about Allen Robinson?
Touchdown upsides there. Targets are there. I mean, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, somewhere around there. I mean, I think he's startable.
I don't think people can really sit Allen Robinson, but I mean, you can't expect a ceiling from Allen Robinson this week, unless like it turns into just like the Chiefs are blowing them out and they're going to have to throw from behind.
Yeah.
The Chiefs are not good against the run, but I cannot trust David Montgomery, especially with that offensive line. So I am staying away from David Montgomery.
Yeah, I agree. David Montgomery is on my top sell list, probably in Dynasty as well this offseason. I mean, you got to get rid of him. He's exactly what he was coming out of college.
That doesn't apply to the pros because it's a lot faster game.
He is a fine running back in college, and he does not have the explosion to give you those big plays. He can grind out 80 yards on 20 carries. That's great, but he cannot. He was compared to Le'Veon Bell in his patience, but really he's just not very explosive. So he can't just burst through a hole like an explosive running back could. So when you're that way and you can't burst through the hole and you're patient, like you're just not going to be very effective at the NFL level. So my last piece of Dynasty advice for the night is if you have David Montgomery, you need to be selling that dude this offseason because it's not worth it. It's not worth it to have those guys. This running back class has 5 better options than David Montgomery easily. Probably closer to 6 or 7 once I really get into it, but for sure 5 that I could name off the top of my head. So get rid of him.
Yep. Agree with that. Tariq Cohen's not much of a start at this point, unless it turns into a blowout, but I don't think you're going to trust that. And
I wouldn't start him.
So it's Allen Robinson and it's Anthony Miller as starts on the other side there. And then our final game of the week here. Sorry for this marathon of a podcast. We're over 2 hours.
Stop talking. That's our problem.
Green Bay Packers at Minnesota Vikings. Running backs.
Mike Boone.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, Sigmund Bloom is all over this, but I kind of agree. Like the dude put up points last week in the absence of Dalvin Cook. He's going to get a Dalvin Cook workload. The Packers ranked 25th in DVOA against the run. They are allowing, I believe, the 8th most fantasy points to running backs on the season. This is such a I think a lot of championships are going to be won on the back of Mike Boone and Brashad Perryman this week.
Yeah, I agree. Dalvin Cook looks like he's going to miss possibly all of December as well. I mean, Mike Boone he's a guy. Okay. You need to pay attention to him. I mean, he ran a 4.49. He's 5'10",
100 percentile burst score as well.
Yeah. 100 percentile burst score. This dude has some juice.
And he can catch the ball. He had back-to-back seasons of 20 plus receptions.
Yeah. So what we're saying is that Mike Boone, if you should have been getting some bids in for him, if he was on your waivers, because I can't see any way he doesn't give you a solid 15 plus points, especially in PPR, probably more. So,
I think this is safe floor and gigantic ceiling.
Yeah.
I don't they just this has been a weird season for the Vikings because of late Kirk Cousins isn't throwing the ball as much. So it's kind of been this weird bell curve of a season for Kirk Cousins where he's not throwing the ball a lot, throwing the ball a ton and doing well, not throwing the ball a lot. So with Diggs and Thielen, I mean, Thielen still got the injury.
Mm-hmm.
I still think he's probably hampered by that, but that secondary has, while they struggled in the middle of the season, have been a lot better of late. So, I mean, it's tough to sit. Well, maybe not. No, wow. Never mind. Anthony Miller, 22.3, Allen Robinson, 16. Maybe not. DJ Moore had 16.5. Mike Williams had that big game. So I get playing Diggs. I get playing Thielen. I would stay away from Thielen. Diggs is probably a good start.
Yep.
Cousins not a great start by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, but I don't think he's
not the worst start. But
he's the worst.
Probably a high end QB2.
Yeah,
which is fantastic in SuperFlex.
Take it.
I don't think Kyle Rudolph's a good start. Green Bay has been better against tight ends lately.
And Irv Smith always is.
Yeah,
and Irv Smith is involved in the red zone.
So yeah, I think it's Diggs, it's Boone, and it's Kirk Cousins this week. For Minnesota on the other side, you obviously have to start Aaron Jones. Aaron Rodgers has like 4 games.
Sorry, you said Minnesota on the other side.
Sorry. Yeah,
Green Bay.
So it's Aaron Jones.
Yep.
Jamal Williams?
No, I don't like it.
This is the thing where like in championship week, you can't get cute. It's Aaron Jones in the backfield. I don't think you can start Aaron Rodgers. Like he's had those 4 big games. Other than that, he's been awful. Yeah, I said that. Awful.
I cannot, as an Aaron Rodgers, Scott Fishbowl owner, I can tell you that it's been a rough year.
Yeah, me too.
It's been a rough year.
I got sniped on Dak. I got sniped on Lamar. I'm very irritated.
So ultimately, I agree. You can't trust.
But you can't trust Devontae Adams.
Yes.
Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, that's it on the Green Bay side, which is where all their offense comes from anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say one thing. This game being on Monday night does freak me out a little bit because while all of the rumors are that Cook is going to get shut down, Dalvin Cook, he is saying that he's still prepping to play. Alexander Madison gets another day to get better. So just keep an eye on these things. I still think Mike Boone's going to have this backfield basically to himself, and Amir Abdullah might work a little bit.
So Alexander Madison has the high ankle sprain, has not been running or was seen working off to the side with trainers.
I'm saying it's highly unlikely that either of these guys come back, but does the fact that this game on Monday, my question to you, does the fact that this game is on Monday worry you at all for putting Boone in and planning on starting him?
It does, but
got to have some kind of backup, right?
I would think if they don't practice by like Friday or even Saturday, they're not playing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't personally expect either of them to play. I'm 90% accurate on the season on predicting if a guy's going to play or not based on his injury. I don't expect either of those guys to play, but there's still a 10% chance that they might. The fact that it's on Monday has me a little bit more concerned, especially with Cook, because if Cook plays, like Mike Boone's value goes to basically nothing. I mean, Dalvin Cook he dominates touches. So,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think either one of them is going to play. I just say, keep an eye on those kinds of things.
Fair enough.
All right.
So that's it. That was a 2-hour podcast. We're all going to go pass out now. Good luck in your championship games. Go follow Ethan Turner at eTurner PT eTurner FF _PT.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Go follow Ethan Turner at eTurnerFF _PT. Get all of the fantastic analysis on injuries and fantastic analysis on fantasy football in general. Follow me at FF Stompy. Follow the podcast at SuperFlex Show. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. That helps us get out to the masses. And good luck in your championships. Bye, everybody. Oh, wait, I forgot. Stay sexy and super flexy.